Imagine a very rich and famous family, like in a fairy tale. They have castles and crowns, and everyone around the world knows their names. But sometimes, even in the most famous families, big problems can start. It can be like a small crack in a beautiful picture frame. At first, you might not notice it, but over time, that crack can grow and grow until the whole picture breaks into many pieces. That's kind of like what happened with Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. They seemed to have a perfect love story, but behind the fancy clothes and big smiles, a huge fight was brewing. And it wasn't just any fight, it was a battle that would shake a very old royal family and change everything for two little children. What started as a love story turned into a big court case, with secrets, surprises, and words that cut deep. Today, we're going to open the secret files and see how a fairy tale became a courtroom drama and how one decision changed a royal family forever. It was February 11th, 2026 in London. Everyone thought this day would bring peace to Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Just a few hours before, they had met with people to sign a paper that would make things calm between them for good. This paper was special and came from a law made to protect children. It was simple and clear with three main rules. Harry could visit his children Archie and Lilibet twice a month, but only when someone else was there to watch. Harry and Meghan couldn't take the children to other places without both of them agreeing in writing, and they would split the cost of the children's schooling, with Harry paying 60% and Meghan paying 40%. But as the sun came up over the big legal building in California, the idea of peace broke into many sharp pieces. Before the ink on the paper was even completely dry, Meghan Markle started a huge fight in court. People who watch royal family legal matters say it was the strongest fight against the royal family ever from one of its own. The paper she filed in court was very angry. It was a formal way to ask the court to look at everything again and to burn all the bridges, meaning to stop any chance of peace. Her main lawyer, Sher Tilden, told the news cameras that this wasn't just a plan for parents to share their kids. She said it was a plan to keep Meghan trapped. Meghan's team said that Prince Harry had used the royal family's power, pretending it was about family, to force a deal that was unfair, possibly not legal, and meant to punish her emotionally. Think about that for a moment. Less than a day after they signed a peace paper, the world was back in a fight over the children. This made all other royal family problems look small. But here is a very scary detail. Much later in this story, we will get to the final court decision. In that decision, a judge named Maya Caldwell looked straight at Meghan, who used to be a very important royal, and said one sentence that changed the royal family forever. You cannot use being a mother as a weapon and then not take responsibility at the same time. How did things get so bad? How did a beautiful love story turn into a close look at a company that failed? Why did a mother of two royal children secretly plan to move them to a faraway country called Qatar, while everyone thought she was fighting for her rights in California? Today, we will uncover the final, huge breakup of what we can call the Sussex Empire. We are going inside the secret courtrooms, looking at secret money accounts, and learning about hidden royal rules. This is not just about a divorce. This is the moment the royal family decided it wouldn't yell anymore. It would just win by lasting longer than her. As we start this long journey into the heart of this problem, remember one thing. In the world of the royal family, being quiet is the strongest weapon. But the papers that show what happened are the final judge. This is the first part of our story. The moment Meghan Markle's lawyers clicked the send button on that 72-page reply, the fight changed. It was no longer a private disagreement. It became a total war where everything would be destroyed. This was not about figuring out which weekends the children would spend with their father. It was a cold attempt to tear down the good name of a prince. Meghan's main lawyer, Sher Tilden, didn't just say the February 11th agreement was wrong. She said it happened because the royal family forced it. In the world of big court cases, this is like dropping a bomb. The court papers said that the royal family's lawyers, led by Princess Anne, had tried to scare Meghan outside of court. Meghan's team claimed that secret information was given to the news on purpose to make her legal standing weaker and force her to agree to an unfair deal. But the most shocking part of the papers wasn't the attack on the royal family. It was the careful attack on Harry himself. For the first time in a court, Meghan's team brought up old rumors that people had only whispered about on the internet. They asked for a full and careful check of Harry's mental health, saying he had disappeared for hours 3 times during big family events between 2017 and 2019. The papers also said he acted aggressively when he had too much to drink in early 2018. To people watching, this felt like Meghan was going against the very story she and Harry had told for years, a story of helping each other heal and protecting each other from the cold royal family. Now, the idea of healing was gone, replaced by a cold list of Harry's alleged failures. Meghan's team argued that while Harry's job after 2020 was just for show, her own job was the real foundation. In her eyes, he was just a figurehead, but she was the one holding everything up. This leads us to the most debated part of the court papers, the 5 main points for judging. Meghan wanted to change the story by focusing on money she made, where they lived, how they parented, how Harry acted as a husband, and his mental health. She used California laws that usually put the mother first in taking care of children. The message was clear. In California, a prince is just another father, and a duchess is a mother who has been put on a blacklist by a big international family. The document claimed that the 60-40 money split for education was random and unfair, because Meghan's income had supposedly dropped a lot after the palace took away some of her brand rights on February 6. She wasn't just asking for custody of the children. She was asking for $187,000 every month for herself. The reason? Her career was hurt because of her ties to the royal family and damage to her reputation. But here is where things get confusing and where we need to pay close attention. If these stories about Harry's drinking and strange behavior were true, and if they happened as early as 2017, the very year they got engaged, why were they only being used against him now, in 2026? The royal family's lawyers responded to these claims in a very calm way, simply pushing them aside. Palace sources said Meghan's actions were just a desperate attempt to cause trouble. They argued that everyone involved was following international laws to protect the royal children. A helper for Princess Anne told reporters that Meghan's team was just trying to make people confuse being seen a lot with being a victim. However, Prince Harry's lawyers, led by Miles Armitage, were already several steps ahead. They expected this exact attack from Meghan. They had already given the court a 17-page defense before Meghan's papers were even filed. This document didn't just say Meghan's claims were false. It showed proof that painted a very different picture of what had happened in the months before. It included letters from December 2025, signed by Meghan, to take the children out of school without Harry's agreement. It also had proof of plans to travel to faraway places like Doha and Dubai for the first half of 2026. The most damaging piece of evidence for Harry's defense was a note about using Archie and Lilibet to be seen more, for their brand visibility. This suggested that while Meghan was saying Harry used the children for money during a heated talk on February 9, she was actually planning a huge marketing campaign worth millions of dollars, using their royal status in the Middle East. As we go deeper into this part of the story, the problem is the contradiction. Meghan was saying she was a mother fighting against a big global empire, yet her own secret papers suggested she was preparing to start a new business era. She demanded a fresh negotiation in a new, neutral place, specifically with someone chosen by the United States Department of Child Welfare Arbitration. She wanted the royal family, especially Princess Anne and Prince William, to give up any formal or informal claim to being guardians of the children. This was a direct challenge to a special agreement from 2024 that Meghan's own advisors had once supported to keep her royal titles. The world was left wondering, is this about the children, or is this about Meghan getting what she felt she deserved for her story and fame? Everything was ready for a first court meeting on February 16 at the Santa Barbara Family Law Courthouse. But before that could happen, a new problem appeared, one that involved a large piece of land in England and a frozen amount of $7,800,000. The war of words was over. The war of showing evidence had begun. And as people started taking sides, the royal family was getting ready with an answer that would show their quietness was not weakness, but careful planning. If the fight for the children was the heart of this problem, then the money details were its cold, calculated brain. In the world of Harry and Meghan, how they looked was everything. But as February 2026 arrived, the cost of keeping up that image finally became public. When the money papers were given to the California court, they weren't just a simple list of what they owned. They were an 87-page detailed look at how their empire was failing. To regular people, Harry and Meghan were people who did good things. To the accountants chosen by the court, they were an example of spending too much on luxury and having bad money records. The most shocking discovery was a huge $2,300,000 spent on personal things using shared credit cards between 2022 and 2025. Let that number sink in for a moment. While the world watched their shows and read their books, a quiet, never-ending drain of money was happening behind the scenes. The list of what they bought looked like an inventory from a fancy store, not a family budget. Over $480,000 was spent on designer clothes from places like Hermes, Dior, and Elie Saab. Another $670,000 was spent on private plane trips for Meghan alone to places like Abu Dhabi and Nice. And perhaps most telling, $310,000 had been used to improve her image and for media training, trying to win back the public's love that was quickly disappearing. Harry's lawyers didn't just show these numbers, they explained why they were important. They showed credit card statements and money logs from their company Hartwell. The claim was clear: these personal luxury items were being paid for through the foundation's special accounts. A leaked statement from a former Hartwell accountant showed how these money trails connected. The worker said that bills were being wrongly labeled later as brand representation or charity work to hide the truth that people who donated money were basically paying for expensive handbags and people to help Meghan with the international news. It was a betrayal of the very promise they had made to the world when they left England. But the money fight went deeper than credit card statements. It reached across oceans into the secret world of offshore money. A hidden document from a U.S. government group that fights financial crimes confirmed that 2 bank accounts in the Cayman Islands belonged to a secret company called Ecol Clover Limited. This company, registered in a British island, was supposedly controlled by someone connected to Hartwell. Between August and December 2025, these accounts supposedly received $890,000 from event organizers in Dubai. None of this money showed up in the foundation's tax reports or in Meghan's personal money statements. When the royal family found out about this, they didn't just say they were worried. They used a special law from 2023 about making royal money clear, sending the documents to a serious fraud office in the United Kingdom. Meghan's spokesperson said these findings were lies and based on old money structures. They argued that every dollar spent was an investment in growing her identity and continuing her career after leaving the royal family. In their view, Meghan wasn't just spending money. She was building a shield against a royal family that didn't like her. However, the real situation at Hartwell was different. As these money details leaked, the foundation started to break apart. The staff's spirits, already low from many people leaving over the years, completely fell apart. 3 important people, including the head of brand partnerships and a deputy lawyer, quit within 24 hours of the court papers being filed. One insider was quoted saying that no one wanted to be on the wrong side of a global fight over children that involved court orders and powerful rulers. The money problems were also starting to hurt Meghan's future plans. Rumors spread in Hollywood that big partners like Spotify and Penguin Random House were rethinking her solo project for 2026, called Woman Without a Crown. The fear wasn't just about the controversy. It was about the damage to her reputation from being connected to a brand that was being checked by tax authorities. Early guesses from a joint investigation by UK charity groups and US tax groups put the possible misuse of money between $2,700,000 and $4,400,000. As we look at this part of the story, we have to ask, was the fight over the children a way to hide the money problems, or were the money problems the reason for the fight over the children? Meghan's legal team fought back by saying Harry was trying to hide royal properties. They pointed to a large estate in England and a total of $7,800,000 in savings that had been frozen by the court. Meghan was now asking for $187,000 every month for herself, saying her career had been ruined by being involved with the royal family. The fight between Harry and Meghan had moved from their hearts to their wallets. And as the money experts dug deeper into Hartwell's computer files, they were about to find something much more damaging than a few expensive handbags. They were about to find the secret plan for Project Mirror, the secret plan that would change how the court saw Meghan Markle forever. But before that big reveal, the British royal family decided it was time to stop just watching. The royal family was about to use its most effective and quiet weapons: Catherine, the Princess of Wales, and a young woman named Lady Louise Windsor. The story was about to change from focusing on Meghan's brand to focusing on the royal family itself. And in the next part, we will see exactly how the royal family started to build the strong wall that would eventually get its children back. While the courtrooms in California were full of noise, the royal palaces in England stayed terribly quiet. This wasn't because they didn't care. It was the quiet of a very old machine getting ready for a precise attack. By mid-February of 2026, the British royal family had stopped just reacting to Harry and Meghan and started to calmly take control. The first sign of this change was when a special group called the Custodial Advisory Committee was officially put into action. Led by Princess Anne, who was the royal family's smartest planner, the palace sent a legal paper to both the UK family court and the British office in Los Angeles at the same time. This wasn't just a news announcement. It was a direct order from the royal family. The paper said that the royal family had officially made Duchess Sophie of Edinburgh a co-guardian, meaning she would help take care of the children during this change. The message was clear. If the California courts agreed to Harry's request for careful supervision, the royal family was already ready with a practical and emotional safety net. Then came a very clever move that showed soft power. Late on the night of February 12th, Princess Catherine released a video from Grey House, which was the home prepared for Archie and Lilibet if they moved there. There were no fancy filters, no dramatic music, and no accusations. Standing in front of a colorful wall of children's drawings, the Princess of Wales spoke for exactly 90 seconds. She said that whatever job she was asked to do, she would do it with grace and clarity, stressing that the situation was about innocent children, not about who would inherit what. The effect was immediate. The video was watched 11,400,000 times in its first 8 hours. While Meghan's team was filing hundreds of pages of legal complaints, Catherine offered a single image of calm. People around the world, especially in Australia, Canada, and New Zealand, quickly started supporting the royal family again. The public didn't want a war of words. They wanted peace for two children caught in the middle. But the real action was happening behind the scenes, away from the cameras. In a move that surprised even the most experienced royal reporters, Lady Louise Windsor, the quiet and very smart daughter of Prince Edward, was seen arriving at an airport in America. She didn't arrive like a regular person. She arrived with special diplomatic protection from a military airport in England, along with 2 officers who help children and a psychologist who helps with trauma. Her mission was a direct use of a special agreement from 2024. This agreement, which Meghan's legal team had once thought was just a small thing to keep their titles, turned out to be a legal Trojan horse, something that seemed harmless but had a hidden danger. It gave temporary special protection to royal children in cases where their reputation or safety was at risk. Lady Louise was there to check on Archie and Lilibet's well-being in person. Because she had diplomatic protection, her presence could not be stopped. Meghan's team in California was stuck. They tried to stop her by saying a California court order prevented outsiders from interfering with child custody, but the international nature of the children's titles and the 2024 agreement made the royal family's move legally unbreakable. Louise's job was to watch and report, but her simply being inside Meghan's home showed that the walls were closing in. At the same time, Prince William started to control the money. He held a private meeting with the Royal Household Financial Office, telling them that all money and property connected to the royal family that Harry shared, including brand names and royalties, should be put under an independent review. This wasn't just a move to protect money. It was a move to cut off the life support to the Archewell brand. By 8:45 in the morning on February 14th, Harry's legal team, feeling strong with support from London, filed a request asking for independent mental health checks for both parents. They mentioned stress records from 2019 to 2022 and Meghan's own episodes of stress caused by the media. Sure, Tilden, Meghan's lawyer, called it weaponized vulnerability, but the court could not ignore the request. The plan of the royal family was now clear. They were not fighting Meghan Markle in the messy news. They were surrounding her with international agreements, frozen money, and a better story about putting children first and keeping things stable. They were using the very systems Meghan had tried to escape to get back the next generation of the royal family. As the Sun said on February 15th, the world was no longer asking if Meghan would win. They were asking how long she could last against a powerful family that had outlived huge empires. But even the palace was not ready for what their computer experts were about to find. Hidden deep inside Archewell's encrypted computer servers was a file that would change public opinion forever. It was a document that showed Meghan wasn't just fighting for her children's future. She was allegedly planning to disappear with them. This brings us to the most dangerous part of the story, the discovery of Project Mirror and the secret deal with the country of Qatar. The air inside the Santa Barbara family law courthouse on the morning of February 16, 2026, felt heavy with the weight of a big secret about to be revealed. Until this moment, the world thought this was a fight about ideas, a struggle between old royal traditions and modern celebrity life. But as the computer experts chosen by the court stood up to speak, the story changed from a messy divorce to something much more planned out. This was the moment Project Mirror was brought into the light. For weeks, Meghan's legal team had insisted that her interest in the Middle East was only for charity, a way to make her global brand bigger. But the digital clues found from a very secure computer server at Archewell told a different story. This wasn't about making her brand bigger, it was a plan to leave. Project Mirror was a document dated January 18, 2026. It wasn't just a random idea or a vague plan. It was a detailed, 42-page step-by-step guide for permanently moving Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet to the country of Qatar. The details were shocking. According to the computer data, which tracked changes made using Meghan's personal login, the plan had been worked on for over 5 months. It described a multi-year deal for media work with an entertainment company that belonged to Qatar's government money fund. But the contract wasn't for podcasts or documentaries about kindness. It was for exclusive access to the lives of the royal children. The plan suggested getting them dual citizenship through a special sponsorship, which would effectively place the children under different laws, avoiding the rules about telling the UK and US courts about child custody. It even named a special international school in a place called Lucille, with enrollment papers already written up but not yet signed. When the existence of Project Mirror was first read aloud in court, the silence was total. Prince Harry, sitting next to his lawyer, reportedly turned pale. For years, he had defended his wife against claims that she was calculating and manipulative. Now he was looking at a document that showed the mother of his children was allegedly getting ready to take them to a country where his rights as a father under Western law would be almost impossible to enforce. This was the important moment the royal family had been waiting for. This wasn't just breaking trust. It was a possible violation of an international agreement about child abduction, even before the move had happened. The intention was now clearly written down. Meghan's main lawyer, Sher Tilden, tried frantically to fix things. She argued that Project Mirror was just a creative idea, a brand exercise meant to explore future possibilities for a woman of color looking for safety from unfair treatment. She claimed it was never a real plan, but the evidence said otherwise. The computer experts showed that private plane records proved 3 round-trip flights between an airport in California and Doha in late 2025, all booked under a secret company. The story of the mother who was a victim started to fall apart under the weight of these technical facts. The missing information was finally found, and the picture it showed was of a woman who felt she had outgrown the legal rules of the West. She didn't want to share the children. As news of Project Mirror leaked to the press, the different opinions in the United States began to change. The very news outlets that had supported Harry and Meghan for years started to pull back. A very harsh article in a big newspaper questioned why someone who said she fought for human rights would look for legal safety in a country with very different ideas about who should be a guardian. Public support for Meghan, which was once a strong 52% in some parts of the U.S., dropped to 28% within 48 hours of the reveal. The American public can forgive a messy divorce, but they strongly dislike the idea of a parent secretly planning to move children across the globe to get around a father's rights. Inside the royal family, the reaction to Project Mirror was one of cold, calm satisfaction. Princess Anne reportedly held a secret late-night meeting with a special counsel that oversees royal children. They didn't just talk about the legal problems. They prepared a special document called the Sandringham Declaration on Sovereign Minor Protections. This document was designed to make sure that no matter where the children were, their status as children of the crown would automatically trigger international legal protections. The discovery of Project Mirror also caused Archuel itself to collapse. Former staff members, fearing they could be involved in a plan to break international custody laws, started to cooperate with the court. 3 anonymous employees gave sworn statements claiming that Meghan's private marketing team had used shared funds to pay for the Project Mirror research, hiding the expenses under the category of global outreach development. One staffer wrote in their sworn statement, "We were told it was about her legacy and she didn't need Harry's approval. We were just following a vision. Now it looks like a crime." By the time the court meeting ended on February 17th, the power situation had completely flipped. Meghan Markle, who had started the week as an aggressive fighter asking for $187,000 a month in support, was now on the defensive. She was no longer fighting for her story's value. She was fighting to prove she wasn't a risk to flee the country with her children. The judge, Justice Maya Caldwell, issued an emergency order. The children's passports had to be given to a court-appointed third party immediately. All digital contact between the children and their mother was to be watched by a child welfare helper. The stakes could not have been higher. If Meghan had succeeded with Project Mirror, she would have created a new kind of royal life, one where the children were the main valuable parts of a private media empire protected by the laws of a foreign country. Harry would have been reduced to distant memory, a small detail in a brand new story. But the royal family didn't let that happen. By outlasting her by waiting for her to go too far, they had allowed her to provide the very evidence they needed to end the war. As we get ready for the final part, the day of judgment at the Santa Barbara courthouse, remember that Project Mirror wasn't just a file on a computer server. It was the reflection of a brand that had lost its way. The big moment was coming, and it would leave one side in complete control and the other completely alone. The court was now ready for the final hearing with all the evidence. The world was watching, and Harry was finally ready to speak for himself. Not as a duke, but as a father who had almost lost everything. This is part 6, the day the mirror broke. The final act of the royal family's fight with Harry and Meghan over their children happened behind tightly closed courtroom doors. At exactly 1:03 in the morning on February 18, 2026, the area outside the Santa Barbara Family Law Courthouse was buzzing with news drones and the quiet whispers of hundreds of reporters. When Meghan Markle arrived, she didn't do it with the usual big show of a global star. She was surrounded by 4 lawyers and a digital expert. She wore no royal jewelry, no Archuel brand items, and no designer clothes that could be easily recognized. She wore black pants and a fitted jacket, dressed in a way that showed a quiet, defiant silence. Inside courtroom 4B, the air was formal and serious. Justice Maya Caldwell, a judge known for her calm and precise way of handling international family disputes, wasted no time. This was a private hearing where evidence was presented, but the leaks that came out hours later painted a picture of a complete legal and emotional defeat. The most important part of the morning was the detailed questioning about the Project Mirror computer data. Meghan's legal team tried to stick with their defense that it was just a hypothetical brand exercise, but the court-appointed experts showed evidence that was impossible to deny. The files, dated January 18, 2026, showed that Meghan had personally looked at the enrollment papers for the Lucille School 14 times in a single week. Even more damaging was the discovery of a secret message sent to a legal advisor in Qatar, asking for a government guarantee that she wouldn't be forced to return the children. When Justice Caldwell asked Meghan to explain why such a guarantee was needed, the courtroom reportedly fell silent for 30 seconds. Meghan did not speak. Her main lawyer, Sherry Tilden, tried to speak up, but the damage was done. The intention to bypass the laws of the United States and the United Kingdom was no longer just an idea. It was a proven fact. The hearing then moved to the financial mess of the Archewell Foundation. The court looked at the detailed transfers of $1,100,000 to the UAE and the $480,000 spent on expensive fashion. Harry's team argued that these weren't just personal expenses. They were a systematic misuse of money that was supposed to be managed jointly for the benefit of the children. Then came the moment that will be studied in law books for decades. Justice Caldwell turned her attention to the psychological evaluations. She referred to the idea of narrative equity that Meghan had claimed and the weaponized vulnerability she had used against Harry. The judge looked directly at Meghan and delivered the sentence that immediately appeared on news screens across the globe. You cannot use being a mother as a weapon and then not take responsibility at the same time. The decision that followed was a complete victory for the royal family. Justice Caldwell ordered that the February 11th agreement remain in effect as the permanent plan for the children's lives. All attempts to move were strictly forbidden without both parents' written consent, backed by a $5 million bond, but the financial and professional punishments were even more severe. Meghan was ordered to pay back $1,300,000 of misspent Archewell funds to the frozen joint estate within 90 days. The Archewell Foundation itself was ordered to be shut down, with its remaining money frozen until it could be given out under charity law. In a move that basically destroyed Meghan's influence online, control of the @Archie social media account and its 3,200,000 followers was given to the Royal Child Welfare Trust. Most shockingly, Meghan was forbidden from starting any company, trademarking any name, or creating any media product that used the terms Archie, Windsor, Sussex, or Lilibet for 10 years. The judge ruled that these terms were royal assets and could not be used for private business profit during a custody dispute. As the ruling was read, observers said Meghan's face showed no emotion. She didn't cry, she didn't yell, she sat still while her lawyers whispered frantically. Prince Harry, seated just a few feet away, reportedly kept his head down, his eyes closed. There was no sign of victory, only the visible weight of exhaustion. At 1:23 in the afternoon, Meghan Markle left the courthouse. The difference from her grand entrance into the royal family 8 years prior could not have been more striking. There were no black SUVs with dark windows waiting for her, no Archewell staff, no press conference. She walked to a regular car driven by a private assistant and left quietly. For the first time since 2018, she was truly alone in the eyes of the law. The effects were quick. Within 2 hours, the Royal Gazette updated its records. Meghan's name was officially removed from all royal trustee positions. The Grey House Protection Act was approved, making sure that Archie and Lilibet would remain under the shared guardianship of Princess Catherine and Duchess Sophie whenever they were in England. Just after sunset, the final blow was delivered not by a judge, but by Harry himself. He issued a handwritten statement on the royal family website. It wasn't signed as a duke, it wasn't signed as a prince. It was signed Henry Charles Albert David. He wrote, "I will never be perfect, but I will be present. I will be a father before I am anything else." The money war was over. The custody war was settled. The brand war was lost. The royal family had closed its gates. They had not used anger, and they had not used arrogance. They had used the law, they had used their history, and they had used a cold, lasting silence. They had simply outlasted her. As the world turned its attention back to the quiet halls of Windsor, it was clear that the royal family had secured its future by protecting its children. The Sussex era had ended, not with a bang, but with a lengthy court order that brought back the Order of the Crown. History will remember February 18, 2026, as the day the mirror finally broke. After February 18, 2026, a strange and quiet stillness fell over both sides of the ocean. The drones that once flew constantly over the Montecito mansion flew away, looking for a newer, louder, sad story. But for the people involved in this 6-year drama, the quiet was the biggest result of all. Meghan Markle found herself in a legal and social world she no longer recognized. The 10-year ban on using her main brand names, the very words she had used to build a global identity, acted like a digital cage. She was now a woman of great fame but no power to tell her own story. The $1,300,000 she was told to pay back to the shared money was only the start of her financial changes. The real cost was the complete disappearance of the Sussex glow. Without the royal connection and without the Archewell engine, her brand was an empty shell. She was left to live in a world where she was no longer a duchess in the eyes of the law, but a regular person watched closely every day by a court-appointed child welfare helper. For Harry, the path forward was one of quiet, painful rebuilding. By signing his final statement as Henry Charles Albert David, he didn't just end a marriage, he tried to get his true self back. He went back to the safe royal corridor not as a conquering hero returning home, but as a father looking for a safe place that only a very old institution could provide. The Sandringham Declaration on Sovereign Minor Protections made sure that his children would grow up with a foot in both worlds, but with a foundation built on the strong stability of the royal family. He had traded the unpredictable spotlight for the cold, lasting safety of the institution he once tried to escape. The children, Archie and Lilibet, became the quiet center of this solution. Under the Grey House Protection Act, their lives would no longer be planned for social media likes or documentary stories. They would grow up protected by Duchess Sophie and the steady guidance of Lady Louise, shielded from the idea of narrative equity that had almost seen them move to the sands of Qatar. As we finish this long look into the most aggressive legal battle in royal history, one final question remains for all of us. Was this a story of a family falling apart, or a story of an institution protecting its future at any cost? The royal family did not use the modern ways of the 21st century to win this war. They did not use podcasts, viral social media posts, or explosive tell-all interviews. They used the one thing that fame and money cannot buy: time. They waited. They collected evidence. They outlasted. In the history books of the future, the Sussex era will probably be remembered as a small, troubled chapter in the thousand-year story of the British monarchy. It will be remembered as the moment when personal branding tried to take the place of royal bloodline, and when the world learned that a crown is not just a pretty decoration but a strong fortress. The mirror has broken, the gates are closed, and for the first time in almost 10 years, the House of Windsor is at peace. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us into the fall of an empire. If this investigation has changed how you think about how law, royalty, and fame mix, please share your thoughts. But as you do, remember the two children at the heart of it all.